I told them to stop. They didn't listen. Barbara tore out my wife's lilac bush, turned my driveway into a shortcut for PDA moms and HOA meddlers. So, I built something buried deep under the gravel, steel, pressure-loaded, hidden. When her Audi rolled in like she owned the place, I hit the switch. Boom. Her tires popped like confetti. She screamed. I sipped my coffee. Right then, she knew this wasn't her road, it was mine, and she was done trespassing. My name is Mark Sullivan. I'm 45, and I've lived a life that left more scars on the inside than most will ever know. I used to be a husband, a systems engineer, a guy with a vision. Now I'm just a man with a dog, a toolbox, and a house too big for one. My wife, Laura, died 2 years ago in a head-on crash with a drunk driver, coming home from buying a tart for my birthday. They said she didn't suffer. I did. Something in me kept going, but it wasn't living, not really. Since then, peace has been a luxury I can't lose. I quit my job at the tech firm and started consulting from home. It's quieter, no meetings, no fake smiles, just blueprints, code, and Bailey, our retriever, who never left Laura's side when she was alive and now sticks to mine. Laura and I bought this house together, our dream homey, a corner lot with a curving driveway set back from the street. It was our haven. She called it our secret meadow. We planted trees, built a birdhouse where we buried a time capsule with love letters and a tiny bottle of gin. She wanted us to open it on our 25th anniversary. We only made it to 12. This house is my world now, the creak of the porch glider, the way the light hits the front path at dusk, even the cracks in the driveway. We built this life one weekend at a time. It's all I have left. So when strangers started driving through my driveway like it was a public road, it felt like they were trampling her memory. At first, it was just tire tracks, a few scratches. Maybe the neighbor's kid testing his scooter. But they got bolder, messier. Then one day, I stepped outside and saw it. A laminated sign on a cheap stake jabbed into my lawn. Community flow access, temporary routing approved by HOA. I stood there, holding the sign, feeling like it had insulted Laura's grave. My land, our land, was now a shortcut, no permission, no discussion. I drove to the HOA office, a converted model home at the neighborhood's entrance, smelling of old flyers and fake lemon polish. There she was, Barbara. Real name. No cliché, spared stiff auburn hair, eyebrows arched like she was always judging, dressed in a lavender cardigan with silver buttons, clutching an iPad like it was her crown. Her lips were a tight, smug line. When she saw me, she flashed a smile that could condescend a priest. "Mr. Sullivan, isn't it?" she said, her voice syrupy with a bitter edge. "Parcel 79C, lovely lot. We've implemented a temporary traffic solution during construction on Birch Way. Just a few weeks." "This is my land," I said. "Private. Not for shortcuts." She didn't blink, just tapped her iPad with manicured peach nails. "Technically, your property borders the community line, qualifying it as a soft access zone if board approved." "Soft access zone," I said. "Show me where that's written." She gave me that smile again, the kind that makes your skin crawl. "We can review the paperwork at the next meeting, second Tuesday next month. By then, the road work will be done." I stared. "You're saying strangers can use my driveway, and I get a promise to talk about it after it's over?" She looked at me like I'd flunked a quiz. "We're all part of a community, Mr. Sullivan. Sometimes that means sharing space. It's about unity." Unity. What a word to throw at a man who lost everything and asked for nothing. I walked out, hands shaking not from fear, but fury. I told myself to stay calm. Maybe it was temporary. Maybe a gate or sign would fix it. The next morning, I woke to digging. They'd ripped out Laura's lilac bush, the one she planted. HOA contractors were spreading gravel across my lawn, setting up cones, signs, paint. One sign read, "Exit only. Please drive slow." On my land. I stood barefoot in the driveway, Bailey beside me, staring at the destruction like it was her headstone being vandalized. That's when I knew Barbara wasn't just a nuisance with a tablet, she was a tyrant in silk, and she'd picked the wrong man to cross. The war didn't start loud. It started with a stream of SUVs and minivans. By week's end, my driveway was a thoroughfare. I'd be on the porch with coffee when cars rolled through like they were late for book club. One woman waved like I was her concierge. Another honked because my trash can was in her path. I caught a kid skateboarding down the curve, earbuds in, acting like my driveway was a public rink. He nearly clipped Bailey, who barked, sending him tumbling. I apologized. He flipped me off. That's when I stopped saying sorry. The final straw. A mom in a Yukon pulled up, lowered her window, and asked if I could move my mailbox just a tad for her turn radius. That night, my neighbor Dave lingered by the fence. Dave was the quiet type, helped with block party setup, but stayed mute unless you handed him a beer. Tonight, he looked like he'd swallowed nails. "Mark," he said, voice low. I didn't want to stir things up, but... "What is it?" "Barbara's making moves. Big ones. She's petitioning the county to reclassify your driveway as a neighborhood easement. Calls it an unofficial emergency access route for community safety flow." My mouth went dry. "She's got 2 board members signed on," Dave added. "Needs 3 more. Once they hit 5, they'll file the paperwork." I stared. "She's trying to steal my land." He nodded. "Not figuratively, literally." That night, I stood at the driveway's edge, Bailey beside me, boots sinking into their gravel. I watched cars roll by, headlights sweeping my porch. This wasn't a mix-up. It wasn't temporary. It was an invasion. I cracked a beer, stared at the ground, and muttered, "They think I'll fold." What they didn't know was I used to design security systems for warehouses, tire shredders, retractable bollards, remote locks. If Barbara wanted my driveway as a road, she was about to learn how roads could strike back. First, I called Greg, my cousin, a rough-around-the-edges lawyer who filed lawsuits from his truck and kept legal files in his garage. When it came to property law, he was a bulldog. I told him everything. He cut me off. "Take photos. Document it all. Don't block access, yet let them think they're winning." "Why?" I asked. "Because when we hit, it's with evidence, not emotion. Trust me, Mark, we'll bury them in paperwork so deep they'll need a GPS to find daylight." He told me to set up cameras, record every car, tire mark, sign. Get timestamps, plates, leave it all untouched for now. "But Greg, they're wrecking my land. Every inch they touch is another nail in their coffin." So I became a surveillance ghost. Trail cams in the shrubs, motion lights, infrared. I spent evenings with Bailey, sipping coffee while cars zipped through like it was a speedway, waiting for Barbara to overstep. She didn't take long. The next morning, Bailey growled at the back fence. I stepped outside and nearly dropped my mug. For guys in yellow vests were chainsawing my fence, not trimming, not fixing, sawing. One turned, like I was interrupting his break. "Barbara approved this," he said. "We're linking the park trail for alternate access. Gotta maintain flow." Flow. I marched forward. "This is my fence, my land." He shrugged. "Community adjacent. No permit needed." They left when I threatened to call the sheriff, but the damage was only a 5-foot gap in my fence, like a kicked-in door. I called Greg. "Good," he said. "Let them dig their grave. Now we go on offense." That night, we filed a cease and desist letter and a preliminary injunction with the county, backed by photos, footage, and every HOA violation. But that was Greg's game. Mine was mechanical. They wanted flow. They'd get a lesson in defiance. And the next part? That's where it gets sharp. I woke to tires crunching gravel, first 1 car, then 3, then more. It was time. Bailey stood by the window, ears perked, sensing it. I walked to the garage, opened the breaker box, and flipped a hidden switch. The system hummed to life, green light, steel ready. I poured coffee, grabbed the remote from the toolbox, and stepped onto the porch. Barbara came first, her black Audi gliding onto my drive. She didn't slow, didn't notice the subtle shift in the gravel's texture. Maybe she didn't care. When you think you rule the world, you stop checking the ground. Behind her, a Range Rover, a Pilot, a minivan, a parade of entitlement. I watched them hit the trigger zone, coordinates eyed mapped with the precision of a man who once built retractable barriers for loading docks. Barbara's front wheels crossed the hidden steel plate. I pressed the button. A sharp hiss of air and metal, the sound of justice. Crunch. Her tires blew, both front ones. The Audi lurched, grinding to a halt, tires flapping like gutted fish. The cars behind screeched to a stop. Barbara stumbled out, wobbling in her flats like she'd stepped into a war zone. Her tailored gray slacks were dusted with gravel, her silk blousey a loud coral thing fluttering like a flag she'd never admit was white. She stared at her tires, then at me. I sipped my coffee. She screamed, You sabotaged a community road. I raised my voice for the others to hear. Private drive. You were warned. She pointed at the gravel. There are spikes in there. Yep, I said, calm as dawn. Retractable, legal, documented. Signs at the entrance, you missed it. She faltered, then snarled. You'll hear from the HOA. I smiled. And you'll hear from Greg. She glared, then her eyes narrowed, her voice dropping for just me. I wonder what Laura would think of this. My blood froze. That was a line she shouldn't have crossed. I said nothing, just walked inside. I didn't need to fight her anymore. I'd already won. An hour later, a certified letter arrived from the HOA, laughably absurd. They demanded I remove hazardous installations and accused me of endangering residents. Greg's reply, sent overnight, was a masterpiece. Cease and desist, trespassing claims, damages, video evidence, and a full-color printout from my trail cam showing Barbara's car passing the warning sign. But Barbara wasn't on a narcissist don't quit. They doubled down. She called an emergency HOA meeting the next evening. Greg and I arrived late, on purpose. The room was crammed, folding chairs, stale coffee, the stench of petty politics. Barbara sat at the head, a stack of photos of her ruined tires spread out like a crime scene. She saw me and smiled like a wolf who thought she still had fangs. This man, she declared, standing, has endangered our community. He's installed military-grade traps on a shared route. I raised a hand. She ignored me. Greg didn't. He stood, in a garish palm tree shirt that clashed with the room's drabness, and passed out copies of my property deed. This isn't a shared retee, it's private, owned, documented, recorded. You voted to use it based on false information. That's fraud. That's liability. The room went quiet. Barbara flushed. He's exaggerating. Greg grinned. Then let's talk about this. He played security footage. Barbara's lackey, Steve, caught at 2:19 a.m., in black, cutting caution tape, tampering with my gate lock. Gasps. Murmurs. A woman muttered, "Is that Steve?" Another voice. "Barbara, didn't you forge my name last year?" Greg locked eyes with Barbara. This was an organized act by the HOA. You're responsible. A board member stood. I moved for a vote of no confidence. Another seconded. All in favor. Hands shot up like fireworks, except Dave's. He hesitated, looked down, then slowly raised his hand. Barbara's face drained of color. The queen was toppling, but she wasn't going quietly. She turned to me, voice low and venomous. This isn't over, Mark. You think a vote ends this? You don't know how far I'll go. I met her gaze. No, but I know how far I'll go to protect what's mine. She stormed out, heels clicking like a retreating general. I walked home, Bailey by my side, the night air cool, the gravel crunching like victory. The war wasn't over, but the battlefield had shifted. I wasn't defending anymore, I was hunting. Barbara was ousted, but tyrants don't vanish, they slink back, scheming. 2 weeks later, the silence broke. A flyer hit every mailbox. Together we flow, a message from your community liaison. Signed by Barbara. No title, just self-anointed liaison. It had a stock photo of happy families, a new neighborhood map, and a quote about redemption. She'd lost her crown but built a soapbox. Then came an envelope taped to my Garage County letterhead, bold text, notice of investigation, unauthorized land modifications, obstruction of community access, possible code violations. I read it twice, then laughed. It wasn't from the county, it was an HOA complaint, filed by Barbara. I called Greg. He didn't laugh. This is her last shot, he said. If she can't win with votes, she'll drown you in red tape. I wasn't drowning, I was planning. The inspector arrived 3 days later, city sedan, clipboard, sunglasses, the look of a man already over it. I met him in the driveway. Bailey barked once, then sat like a guard, eyes fixed. You Mark Sullivan? I nodded. Hear about the complaint. Need to look around. Be my guest, I said. I've got documents, bound and tabbed. He blinked. Seriously? I led him to the porch, where 3 color-coded binders waited. Zoning, property rights, HOA overreach. He flipped through, silence shifting from formal to impressed. You built this spike system yourself? Prototyped it years ago. Retractable, solar-powered, legal under private land use. He whistled. Saw something like this at a port in San Diego. I grinned. That was mine. He reached the last section, paused. Wait. She submitted this map to us. He held up a copy of the neighborhood plan, my driveway highlighted in green, labeled Emergency Route B. She forged this. It's not in the official record. I nodded. We've got meeting footage where she presented it. Timestamped, public. He exhaled, looked up. That's going to be trouble for her. Then, quieter. You've done your homework. Wish more homeowners fought like you. He snapped a photo of the fake map, glanced at Bailey, gave a subtle nod. I'll file the report today. What followed didn't make the news, but it made waves in Willow Creek. The county audited not just Barbara's fake maps, but every HOA decision she'd touched in 2 years' contracts, permits, budgets. Turns out, Barbara used HOA funds for a $650 tablet for her home, a team-building retreat in Napa under her cousin's name, and $1,300 in community engagement supplies posters with her smiling face and a Barbara Builds banner. The fallout was swift. Fines, a 5-year ban from HOA leadership, a criminal probe looming. Board members quit. The HOA bylaws were rewritten. Barbara vanished. Some said she fled town, others that she was lurking in her brother's condo, stalking the neighborhood's social media like a scorned exile. I didn't care. The war was done. 2 months later, the shortcut was dead. The gravel hardened. The sign stayed. Private property. No through traffic. Trespassers will be spiked. One afternoon, Dave stopped by, holding something wrapped in butcher paper. Inside was a wooden frame with a hand-drawn cartoon, a sad tire with a speech bubble. I regret everything. Found it in my kid's sketchbook, Dave said, rubbing his neck. Figured you earned it. I laughed, a real, deep laugh I hadn't felt in years. We grilled burgers that weekend. A small gathering turned into a block party. Neighbors I hadn't spoken to in ages brought chairs, beers. A woman who once reported my unmowed lawn baked me a pie. Greg showed up in his loudest flamingo shirt and sunglasses, waving a fake certificate in a cheap frame, to Mark Sullivan, for exemplary defense against neighborhood tyranny. It was absurd, and it was perfect. That night, after the laughter faded and the grills cooled, Bailey at my feet, I stepped into the driveway. The air was still, the trees rustling softly. The gravel glinted like coals under the porch light. I knelt, opened the maintenance hatch, and checked the spike system still armed, still ready. I didn't press the button. I didn't need to. This wasn't about gravel or fences or HOA rules. It was about the one thing I couldn't save before the life we built, the peace we dreamed. This time, no one would take it. I turned off the porch light and headed inside. But just before the door closed, I caught it across the street, low in the bushes, a faint red blink. A hidden camera, still watching. Bailey growled, barely audible. I stepped back, stared into the dark, and whispered, "Let her try." Then I shut the door. Barbara was gone, but maybe not forever.